My name is Doug Salat. I'm the lead for the Electronic and Technical Arts here at Boeing. Our hope is that this talk will lead us into a series of classes on building your own drone and learning how to fly it. The first one is scheduled on March 27th. It's called Drones 101. You can find that on our calendar. And the instructor for that class and the presenter for today's talk is Mark McComsey, who is enthusiastic about CAD, CNC, 3D printers, and he likes drones because it allows him to combine all of those interests, plus you get to wear those cool goggles too, right? All right, Mark?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming. I have some pretty simple objectives for today. Introduce everybody to what first-person drone really is. It's fundamentally different than what you might think of with drones. Most people see one just slowly kind of flying, and people are looking at their phone to control it or tiny screen. Never really seemed too interesting to me because you're just seeing a little speck in the sky, and you really don't have that much control over what you're looking at. I mean, you can maybe, on some of the stabilized drones, point a camera, but it's really just a way to capture some pretty boring footage. With first-person drones, you have the point of view as if you were a pilot on the drone. So it's quite intense. You can easily get vertigo the first few times you fly. And up until the evolution of this technology, which is fairly recent, combination of a couple of things came together to make this hobby actually pretty accessible. And the most important part of it is the high-quality simulators. In the old days, people would try to fly these things, and it was really seat of your pants, and you're going to inevitably crash it probably within 10 seconds of flying it if you've never flown one before. It's not very intuitive. With a simulator, you can spend anywhere from 5 to 20 hours and go right in, and the very first time you fly, you can have a pretty good flight. That was my experience. I'd never flown a drone before in my life, and I just spent a little bit of time on the simulator and learned basics, how to take off, how to land, change direction, that sort of thing. And I went and I flew it, and it was great. And then I looked down as I was flying over my house, and I freaked out. Promptly crashed on top of my roof. It's really it'll take your breath away for most people first time you fly it. The goggles with the new digital DJI goggles that have been out for a few years, it's a really high quality picture. It's like the difference between VHS and DVD or better. So just moving on, again, first person drone stands for literally first person view. And that means that the drone has a little tiny camera that's broadcasting live footage right back to you. The thing that matters, though, is things like latency. How much of a difference between what you're seeing and what's happening. And when DJI came around, they created something that was digital, high quality video. You could really see what's going on, and also it had a very low latency. 20 to 40 milliseconds, I think it is. And you really get the point of view. You can see what's going on. You can control what you're seeing. And now, in a very short number of years, first-person drones have really taken over the entire film industry and TV. I think I read somewhere 85% of all aerial shots are now done with drones for movies. That's on the high end. Those drones are obviously bigger. They have big professional cameras that cost tens of thousands of dollars, that sort of thing. But you can get really good quality footage just with a relatively low cost thing. Let's start off and talk about why you can get stuff using these first person drone you could never get with anything else. This is a Red Bull ad or commercial that was shot with almost entirely on one shot hence the name of the title of the shot, with a drone on a top motocross rider. And I'm going to make this close see. And he's literally flying right behind the guy,
one-shot concept
controlling
is
it.
really interesting. We're basically trying to film Tyler's 5-minute line with 0 edits, so there's no breaks, 0 cuts. It's just one fluid, seamless piece of video, which should come out really cool. Fingers crossed.
I could grab it!
My name is John Scher. I go by Johnny FPV in the drone world, and I am a first-person view racing drone pilot.
My name's Tyler Behrman, and I ride dirt bikes.
So, you know,
Pressure
you
was a
can
lot
kind of
higher.
get the idea.
Drill the whole line,
You can
5.5 minutes,
put
one take.
the
That
camera,
was the hardest part.
whatever
Biggest
you,
benefit
you
of
know,
the
whatever
HD
you
system
want,
is the image
and
quality
you could
as
just
well
never
as
get
the
those
transmission
shots
strength.
any other
so
way.
when I'm flying right behind Tyler.
That's in the basic.
So maybe not everybody wants to make a Red Bull movie, but you know, there's a lot of different things you can do with this type of filming and experience. I've got into it more because I love the outdoors. I love scenery, and being able to do what we call mountain surfing is, you know, one of my favorite things. I'll give you an idea of what I'm talking about here. And has anybody heard the term mountain surfing before? Well, this is it. You can literally fly, you know, up to the top of the mountain and stuff. And these drones have some real range and speed, and it's quite breathtaking. And this was shot on, you know, $500-600 consumer drone with a GoPro type camera. No, I didn't. But this is an amateur guy that runs a YouTube video a channel, and I think he's in Europe. But there's a million of these if you Google mountain surfing or on YouTube. Up to 10 miles. That's the hard limit for digital. It's the video that's the issue. There's also licensing issues and stuff. You have to fly within visual line of sight, which is farther than you might think if you're using LEDs and that sort of thing. But and different countries have different rules, and if you have a commercial license or not. But this is, to me, really exciting because there's, you know, I always wonder what's up on that mountain up there or across that body of water or whatever. And yes. So is the operator seeing that quality? That's exactly, yeah, they're seeing a 720p, very high quality digital screen. It's way more than you need to fly. And you can see like a little twig or branch coming up or anything you want, unlike the older analog style. And that's a GoPro. So that they basically, or Insta360 or any of these new generation of cameras go up to 5.7K. There's a couple now that do 8K, and it's consumer grade, and it's not that expensive. So
there's a digital signal of pretty good quality coming real time, but then on board is being recorded to an SD card.
yes, that's exactly correct. You have to understand the building blocks, which we're going to get into these things. You have a basic craft which flies. You have a video transmitter that's live streaming what is happening, so you can navigate and see and you know, point the camera whatever you want. And then you have a secondary system in many cases, which I strongly recommend, which provides control of the craft and using a different radio protocol. Reason for that is, let's say that you had a video failure, or now you can't see where you're going. well, you can flip a switch on your control, and that's what's called fail-safe, and it will drop out of the sky. But nowadays, we have what's called GPS rescue. And if you could flip the switch, and all of a sudden it's going to return to home and likely recapture your video signal. So some of the transmission protocols, like I use what's called Crossfire, which I think you can go 70 to 80 kilometers, many times farther than it's possible to go with the video signal. And that means that no matter what, I could flip a switch and I'm likely to reclaim my craft. There's some gotchas there. If you were flying with something overhead, which generally not recommended, like a tree, it might rise to go home and crash into the tree. But generally, it gives you at least a pretty reasonable chance of recovering. But that long range flying is a skill that you acquire very carefully and over time, and knowing your limits and what to look for and monitor while you're flying and that sort of thing. That's kind of what I'm working up on. I think I've flown just about 6 miles was my farthest flight, and yeah, in the middle of nowhere also. You don't want to. I want to make one point early on. Please, this is a merging hobby. We don't want to be bad participants in this hobby. These things are serious. They're not toys. When you consider that you take a 7-inch drone like I've got over there, it cruises at 80 miles an hour with the right motors. It can get even faster speeds, and that's a lot of kinetic energy. So there's also, this is a regulated hobby, so there's FAA rules, and you need to be aware of a lot of those things. I'll talk a little bit about the rules of the road, so to speak, later, but we don't fly around people. We don't want to fly anywhere there's restricted airspace. I generally fly over the water because I'll lose my drone, but I don't have to worry about hurting anybody or anything. Or go out where there's fields or your property or whatever else. But I would welcome anybody with ideas that has open space that we could fly safely. That's something I'm still learning. So sorry. Any questions on the mountain surfing now? It's pretty cool.
Emergency maneuvering that's being done there. What about latency?
It's a fixed latency of about 20 to 40 milliseconds. It's almost imperceptible, even at miles away. It's really just amazing. The DJI camera I've got on one of the drones, it's 120 frames per second at 720p with basically no latency. So you can do crazy things, and I'll show you what I'm talking about with that. Let's see here.
Your drones have obstacle avoidance?
No, these are first-person drones. You're the obstacle avoidance. You can buy the the GPS drones, and you look at your phone, and you're kind of passively along for the ride. There are some navigation systems that or competing operating systems for these things that are primarily for long distance or navigating fixed grid or that sort of thing. But first person is really a very interactive sport. I mean, if you stop controlling the drone, it's going to crash immediately. You have to, if you want it to hover, which is actually one of the hardest things to do with a first-person drone, you're doing micro adjustments the whole time, and that's where a simulator can make you very good quickly. I would never want to see somebody even try to fly a drone without proper simulation time. And if we have time, we can go over maybe into the ETA and try flying it. I've also got one hooked up. I got my controller, so I could do it here, and you guys can see what I'm seeing what we're doing. So let's talk about acrobatic, just to see understand.
This powerful $99
Sorry about
drone
the
is
ad.
now available in the U.S. This is an extremely high-tech 5.
So this was supposedly one of the top acrobatic videos for drone footage last year, and I'm not going to show the whole thing, but just to give you an idea of how crazy control you have with these things if you're good.
This is a massive facility.
GTI is home to our FPV Freestyle Festival Rotor Riot Rampage. We haven't done one of these since 2018, so we are psyched to bring it back for 2021.
Right now, we're just driving around, checking the locations, make sure things are like good to fly, make sure reception's good, checking out new spots to see if we can add something else to the lineup.
And most importantly, getting some test flying in. We've got to rip every spot here.
So, I mean, you just couldn't really do this, I think, with the older analog cameras as easily. It's hard to see, you know, the wires and everything else. But, although the drone racers might disagree. I'm not in that camp, but. I start getting disorientated when I try to do tricks. I'm more into the cinematic and you know, exploring type thing. But it's for some people, it's just incredible what they can do. When you consider that
Oh, I got skids there in there.
you know, like a racing style freestyle drone has approximately 10 times the power to weight ratio of a helicopter, and you know, pretty good maneuverability. I think yes.
I want to mention that I'm a build your own, do it yourself sort of drone guy as well. But I bought the DJI FPV drone, and it has a few different levels of programming. One is obstacle avoidance; it'll hover in place, but it also has obstacle warning where it'll light up, show you that obstacles are there, and then finally it's completely acro free mode where you can smash and crash.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And I was going to talk about the DJI drone as an alternative. DJI makes the video system that I use in my drones, and they're a big player in the industry. They make more traditional drones that you can look at with a screen. But I think like last year, I think it was, they came up with a first-person drone, and it's a pretty impressive little craft. Decent speed, I think 20+ minute flight time, and it does have some assists and that sort of thing. It is an option. My main issues with it are for, you know, you've got a pretty expensive craft and it's very difficult to fix. Yeah. It's pretty neat. I mean, I've flown one, and thanks. Yeah, I mean, you know, you've got $1,300 buying that package, and you're basically throwing away 700 or 800 of it the first time you crash. In many cases, I'd rather build something with a $20 frame that I can replace just one part of it, or 3D print a new frame for almost nothing, and just. Drones live a hard life. They really do. I don't care how good of a pilot you are. You know, there's just landing is you know, interesting for, especially in the early days. I have a bunch of drones there because I've been building and crashing them, and then later on I acquired the skills to repair them or repurpose the parts. So. Yeah, that's right. We'll talk about costs, but the goggles are a little over $500, and that's the most expensive one. And then the controller, the radio controller that you use to pilot it, which you also use with your simulator as well, is between $100 and $200, depending on which one you pick. So those are fixed costs. The cameras that go on the drones are a little over $100 to $150, and the flight controller computer, which is a little computer on a chip that allows it to fly and do all the stuff it does, anywhere or $50 to $80 typically. So I can build a whole drone for under $300. Oh, you got a nice ARM processor or better STM. It's pretty amazing. Top of the line are what's called H7 processors, or there's F7 processors, most of them. And then there's cheap F4 ones, which work also. So, yeah.
Is that a fixed camera, or you have independent control of the camera?
You can certainly do that, but I have a better option, in my opinion. I've got the control. One that you're going to fly with is for first-person view, is a fixed point of view. And you could put a gimbal on a drone and be able to point it, but it's hard when you're navigating with, that's your goggles, and then also trying to point a camera. That's not very practical. You just point the drone where you want to film. Or you can use a 360 camera. Who here has seen or used a 360 camera? Anybody? Yeah. So it takes a little getting used to, but essentially it's typically two lenses that wide angle that capture an entire 360-degree point of view. And then in the software, you can choose your point of view, whether it looks pretty normal or it looks like a fisheye or anywhere in between. And you can, in the editing software, which you can edit these days on a phone pretty effectively, you can choose exactly what the viewer is looking at the entire time. You can zoom in and make it look like you're accelerating, or zoom out. And I'm gonna show you a video of that in a second. But it allows you film everything, every flight. And the second benefit is you have total stability. Your video looks absolutely rock solid without any jitter or anything that's going to make you seasick. And so yeah, we'll talk about that too. Here, sorry, that was the editing software for it. So let me give you an example of what I'm talking about with this 360-degree video. Oh, I got to show you this first. It's this was some.
If you're a Washington homeowner, 2022.
Obviously shot years ago before the current craziness, but the tallest skyscraper in Europe, and they commissioned the filming, as it was being built. And so this is a little 5-inch drone that shot this, and it's. It's pretty crazy. You can definitely expect your roof. Like I said, you get total control with being able to see like you're actually in pilot seat. You just couldn't do this any other way. Now you can see the distortion there at times. That's a pretty clear giveaway that they were using a 360 camera. But also, it's hard to fly that smooth, especially in the early days. So, yeah, that's a good question. 4-inch, 5-inch generally fly in light winds okay. 10, 20 miles an hour is starting to push it. I mean, in the 20, it'll buffet it around a little bit. It's not so much fun to fly. I tried flying over by Blakely once, and we got some gusts, and it was moving the thing around a little bit. But I mean, I could still fly, but it's calmer's better. You start getting a 7-inch drone, that seems to be the favored for mountain surfing because you can handle some real currents, and it's got a little bit of mass, so it tends to not blow around quite as much. Any questions? Anything else so far? I'm going to give you an example of what can be done with this 360 footage. This was just playing around at my house when I was trying to figure out how to do 360, because this is like only the second video I ever did in 360. And I just mounted it to my drone on an arm, like 18 inches above the drone. And then I'm literally in the software choosing this point of view and how far. Now I'm zooming it out a little bit so you can see the drone. For just a second. Sorry. Let me pause this. Let it build up. Should have downloaded this. I apologize. Yeah. So that's my old drone that Doug watched me crash in the drink. But it was a great drone. It could fly for 50 minutes, cruise at 60, 70 miles an hour. And I never got that far, but supposedly the range on that technology, it could have done almost 10 miles out in any direction. So you can fly a long ways at 50, 60 miles an hour. Honestly, I have a hard time flying more than 15 minutes, aside from just doing laps around my house, because it's so intense. Your brain just gets overwhelmed. So you can see now I zoomed all the way out, and you got the fisheye effect. But watch, I'm going to zoom in. So now it's looking a little bit more normal. And that's all just simple editing with the software. You can just, using your mouse, just pull it in or out the point of view. And I had some smudges on the lens covers, which is why you see a little bit of shadow once in a while. It's just the software automatically edits it out. It does a pretty good job. So, but yeah, I mean, just this thing's really quiet. You wouldn't even notice it more than probably 30 or 40 feet away. It makes probably about this much noise at most. But watch, I get up to 70 miles an hour on this one pass, flying back to the front. I think right around here. Oh yeah, that's part of the getting acclimated. Is it's so easy to get up. That's why I'm not really doing acrobatics yet. So I hit 74 miles an hour right there for a second, just like that. Did anyone not see the Blakely Harbor video? Did everyone see it? Okay, well, this was, I think, no, I actually haven't posted that one, but, I have it on my goggles still, which I only watched it once. There we go. Yeah, it's just part of the sport. So this was, by the way, one thing you should be aware of. The rules say you're supposed to have a observer, and you know, I would highly recommend it, especially if you start flying anything that's not immediate, because coming back home, I can show you another video at the end of it. It helps having an observer like waving or whatever, because there's just a whole protocol you need to learn. Like, because when you take off, you've never seen the ground that you're standing from the point of view of the air before, so it doesn't look familiar when you come back. And you do have a telemetry with a little arrow pointing home, so you can actually navigate that way with the GPS, but it's disorientating at first. I can tell you probably a dozen or so of my first ventures out beyond, my yard type thing. It was kind of hard finding my way home at first. And that's where you want to start slow and build up your comfort and your skill set. So this flight is, I think most people are familiar with this area. And, I'm cruising at like 60, most of it. And, I mean, you don't realize how fast you're going. But it's pretty awesome. Yeah, I keep joking about it. I'll fly over to Discovery Park and back. And the drone will probably do it. I'm just working my way up. I haven't had any issues flying farther. It's just a matter of getting comfortable, and I got to make sure there's no rules about flying across the sound or something, which I haven't really looked at. Try not to fly over houses or people or anything. Yeah, I think the footage, this is shot with the Insta360 camera. It's 5.7K native. This is only 4K. You should see the actual footage. It's just eye-popping. It really is. And watch, I'm changing my point of view on this at different times, from just slightly wide angle to actually zooming in and then all the way out. I decided to let you see the drone at the midpoint, so I just zoomed out a little bit so you could just see it, kind of a little bit of a tease. Yeah, you can with a LED flashing, but I have usually LEDs on it. It depends on your eyesight. At some point without a bright LED on it, it's hard to see it. No, it's the free software that comes with the Insta360 camera. I mean, I use Premiere too, and I'm comfortable with it, but for these videos, it's fine. But I mean, the camera does amazing footage, and you can buy a package with, it's modular, so you can swap the 360 camera with a 4K camera. They even have a 1-inch sensor with a Leica lens that you can pop on it. This is all on a slightly larger than it's basically a GoPro format, and it's also waterproof. So, but now here's where I'm having fun. I'm actually flying straight, but I'm using the software to change my point of view. So I'm actually going to rotate the virtual camera point of view. That's all done without me changing. I'm just flying straight. So that's what I mean by you have total control over what what your viewer is going to look at with the software. There's the old drone. So that's a ultralight frame that only weighs 49 grams. It's foam with carbon fiber sheet, and that's actually the second one because you crash it at all, it's done. It just, I mean, you have to be super delicate when you land it, but which is why I started building my own. And I found I could get something that was lighter or similar weight with, 10 times the durability. Also, 3D printed frames are great. I've got some excellent designs. I do teach fusion classes here, so I'm thinking about doing a drone fusion drone design class if you're interested. And I'm just trying to get down on something soft, like the grass. It typically topples over with that big arm camera. It's 18 inches above the drone. And there you go. So anyway, that's an example of a good 360 video, or what you can do with the technology. I mean, there's people that do a lot better than me, but so let's kind of look at the building blocks of this stuff. Okay, so this is two shots. This is the older analog video versus DJI video on the same place. I think the guy flew both cameras simultaneously and recorded them. You get all these artifacts. Looks like bad videotape, and that's you can fly with analog, and potentially you can fly farther with analog. You can also use like a cellular modem technology if you really had a need to fly, but that's way beyond what I'm interested in doing. I mean, there's just when DJI came out, you've got up to 10 kilometers range and almost no latency. It just changed the whole sport. Yes, they're a huge, huge company that's the dominant player in the drone industry. They make the Mavic and Mavic Pro drones that are used by all the realtors and a lot of commercial broadcasting, everything from like Fox News to whatever, or CNN, or those guys all use DJI drones typically. And some of those have the ability to navigate independently, and then you can point a gimbal camera. So if you want stable, boring helicopter-like footage, that it works great. And there's definitely a need for that for certain types of things. But as a hobby, as something I want to go out and actually get excited about doing it, those things are just a passenger along and it's pretty boring from my point of view. So let's talk about protocols. So there's some different terms in this hobby. And by the way, I'm going to make available this entire presentation on the Slack channel with links, so you got all this if you want it. OpenTX, that's the most common radio control operating system. It's pretty much runs a whole bunch of different radios and everything else. You can customize it entirely to do all sorts of neat stuff, and it's reliable. It works. Crossfire is what I use. That allows you that's like a long range receiver and transmitter protocol, and you use a little tiny chip about the size of smaller than a postage stamp with an antenna, and you can go out. I think they've got people have gone out 70 or 80 kilometers with some of the planes. Drones aren't as efficient at flying long ranges, but you can have a glider or something else. You could fly a really long way, and that'd be an argument for analog video if you want to do that sort of thing. It's not that many people, I think, flying those types of ranges, and you have to be in the middle of nowhere to do it properly. But Crossfire gives me redundancy. I've got a multiple of distance range cushion, so that no matter, even if my video failed or for whatever reason, I could flip the go home to GPS rescue, and it will fly to within 50 feet of me, and then it'll drop out of the sky if I don't take over control of it. But if at 50 feet, I could probably see it and land it myself, even if I don't have video from first-person point of view, just like flying it traditionally. So that gives you, and I've only had to use it twice, but yeah, it just worked. It was awesome. There's newer options like this Express LRS, and there's this Ghost IR system. Basically, alternatives to Crossfire. Crossfire has been around the longest. It's I think dominant, and it's simple to set up. You can watch a YouTube video and have it working on your drone in about 10 minutes usually. The downside is it's the transmitter that goes on as a module into your radio control bay is, like $100 to $200, but you have something that's really reliable. The Express and other ones, I just haven't played with them because I already got the Crossfire. Once you get the module, the little things that go on the drones are $20 or $30, and that's comparable across the board. Betaflight, that is the configuration software that's open source that you set up your drone with, and it's pretty easy. You don't have to be a hardcore computer geek or anything else. You can I literally never touched the software before, and I don't have an experience with any of this technology prior to doing this, but I watched a couple of videos and I just followed how to set up my drone on a couple of them, and it worked. Oh, I've only been doing this for a year. Yeah, I mean, I'd never flown a drone before in my life, and I'm trying to share some hard-won lessons. I went and bought a what's called a bind and fly drone, which is I think cost me about $600, and I still have it. It's been repaired a couple of times, but in retrospect, I would have been much better off just building one at half the cost and learning what to do when it breaks, because it sat for a long time, and I bought another drone before I stopped repeating that error, and I decided I have to learn how to build these things. And I don't think you can, unless you have an awful lot of money and you want to waste just buying a drone every time you crash it. Seems kind of a silly way to do things, especially when most of the parts are very inexpensive to repair them. But if you don't know how to do that, then it can get to be an expensive hobby. That's why I have a recipe on how to build, I think, a really great bulletproof drone that you can drop 30 feet out of the sky, and it probably will be just fine. I know from experience. So there's some great sites, which I really encourage you to click on these links later on if you get the presentation. This guy, Oscar Liang, I probably learned the most from him. He has a tutorial on how to do everything you could ever imagine with this sport, from building your battery, selecting a motor, wiring, literally. He's got a great step-by-step how to build a DJI video drone from scratch, and how to tune, how to do everything. This is a sport or hobby that there's a learning curve. I don't want to minimize it, but it's actually really accessible because you can. We're going to go over here and look at these drones and there's not that much to them. I mean, essentially, you have a frame, you've got motors, You got a little controller, flight controller computer, and you know, a couple other things like your video. And essentially, I have to mount the computer into the drone frame. I have to solder 3 wires for each motor. So that's 12 soldering points. I've got to solder, the video plugs right into the flight computer without me doing anything. The crossfire is 4 little wires that have to be soldered. And the GPS is 4 wires. And that's it. And you go into beta flight and you tell it which channel things are on, which takes about 5 minutes, and you have a drone that will fly. And nowadays, they have what's called pre-configured tunes. That was a big reason people used to buy these bind-in flies, because somebody took a lot of time to make them actually usable, so everything worked and they flew well. But now you can, with beta flight, you can just load the configuration that somebody a lot smarter than me figured out, and it works really, really well. It's the best. The ones that I downloaded fly so much better than the commercial ones I bought. It's not even fair. Here, I'll show you. So this is beta flight, and I'm actually gonna. I think I can. Does anyone have a mini or micro USB cable handy? If you want to grab one. I'm sorry, I meant to bring one, but yeah. Just a second, I'm gonna grab the 5-inch drone. This is the drone that we'd be building in class. So this is a box style frame. It's incredibly rigid, and it's very light. Weighs 49 grams. I've dropped this multiple times, and it's just very durable and it works. That's the whole point. All the parts on it, and I've got most of this laid out. Specification. The flight controller has a little USB port on here.
That controller is running firmware that just has a standard protocol that everybody knows.
Yeah. Everyone uses beta flight, just about. Unless you're doing long-range navigation. And then you've got InNav, which is a competitor that was based on it. Hopefully this will work. Yes. Okay, so let's see. So you can see it move. It's got gyros on it, and so to set it up, you go in here and you've got a couple of ports. So you got to basically tell it where the GPS is, and usually turn 2 serial on so it can do the video telemetry stuff. And then the configuration, you can tell it what type of setup. Usually just a quad is what I'm doing. You've got the type of motor operating setup is called D-Shot or 600, or there's other ones here. But I just followed a menu of options from some of the tutorials and just clicked on these, selected it, and just pretty much just going through like a recipe, like if you're baking. Set up your ports, tell it it's D-Shot, turn on your GPS and if you have a compass, and let's see, there's the GPS right down. This one's moved. There's the GPS right there, and then you can tell it battery stuff if you want the software to track all of that. And let's see, expert mode.
Or is that an add-on module?
It's an add-on module. Yeah, most of the case. Yeah. I'm not getting a signal, I guess, because of the building, but it all works really well. This has a barometer as well, which helps with your altitude calibration. Then your motors. You can, if I plug in a battery, you could operate it. Obviously, you don't want to have propellers on when you are testing the motors, or you want to have the thing clamped really well. These motors can, they're quite powerful depending on which ones you're using. These are about 450 watt motors each. You can, my bigger ones go up to 1300 watts. It's a lot of electricity, a lot of power. My wife found out, unfortunately, when I trimmed the hedge and inadvertently, it looked like it got hit with a weed eater. It cut just as well, maybe better. So, and you can choose what you're looking at. You can basically click on these boxes and, see, I have my arrow that tells me which direction home is, the distance to home. I have my total flight range. There's my altitude, my speed, the number of GPSs I've got. Then I got battery information, my link quality. It's got a warning that'll start flashing if I'm low voltage or that sort of thing. Let's talk a little bit about battery management and stuff. I mean, you're using either lithium ion or LiPo batteries. You need to treat those with respect. I think every year there's one or two people that manage to burn down a building or their house, not handling them. They should be kept like in a metal bucket or whatever, somewhere safe when you're not using them. You need to have a proper battery charger that's with a balance charger. Not hard. You just buy it and plug them in and just put the batteries in a safe place when you're not using them. I've been doing stuff with lithium-ion batteries and LiPos for like 15 years. I made a lot. I was making CNC high-end bicycle lights for a lot of years, and some of them would draw more than 10 amps, brighter than a helicopter searchlight, maximum for off-road use. And you learn how to treat them with respect. But anyway, so this is the software we'll learn about in the class, getting it all set up. And you just go through these different columns, and here's the modes. So like you've got one switch to turn it on. Angle means you can the type of flight, like are you doing acrobat or stabilized flight? With horizon or angle mode, it will keep it even with the horizon basically, which is really helpful because let's say a bee lands on my head or something and I don't want to crash the drone. I can just flip the switch, deal with and give it a little bit of power, and it'll stay up and it'll just be flying straight, flat. It'll go up and down, not forward or sideways or anything. It's stabilized and it works really well. And then I can go back to flying what we call acro mode, which is whatever angle you set, it's going to keep until you change it. I highly recommend you learn how to fly that way. That's correct. You do all of that on the simulator.
Stop. If you turn off the throttle, you're throttling power.
Yeah.
Or not, and then it drops out of the sky.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Or you flip a switch and it'll either return to home or drop out of the sky.
You can't freeze everything. Stop.
Yeah. So here's where this is. So it's called failsafe.
Yeah. Okay.
And so you can choose drop, land, or GPS rescue. Those are your three choices, and there's arguments for all of them depending on where you are. I mean, if you live in the desert or something and you just want to fly really long distances and you have a GPS signal that you're capturing, so you could always locate the drone, then maybe you want to choose land. For most people, drop or GPS rescue or both would be the best choices to set up. If you lose control of the drone, that's a liability that you don't want to be part of, so it needs to drop out of the sky immediately if you can't get it under control with the GPS. And in which case, you can see from the telemetry it's flying home, even if you can't see the video signal, and it's coming closer. Great. So then you have a chance to regain it. Otherwise, you need to drop it, and it's only a few $100s. It's not the end of the world, but that thing hitting somebody or something would be bad. So that's why this is really important to set up. It has a black box with full telemetry. They all have, between 16 and 120 megabytes worth. I mean, you can capture everything you can imagine as far as data, how the motor's doing, the efficiency, all of your telemetry stuff, and everything. It's pretty neat. Any other questions about Betaflight? By the way, this is all free software. It's open source. And you have hundreds of thousands of people that have worked on this. It's one of a true shining example of what open source is capable of. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't make clear it's firmware. Yeah, the tuning parts on it are you can go ahead and load preset things, or you can adjust it. And there's a lot of videos on how to do this. Honestly, it was a big deal until the new Betaflight 4.3 came out, and it came with the most amazing tunes. Right, okay. I'm flying a 5-inch, meaning 5-inch propellers drone. It's Acrobat or it's Cinema. You choose the option, it works. So you don't have to be. Or you can still go off the deep end with this stuff if you want to. But for people that just want to get out and fly, Betaflight's something you set up, you spend 20 minutes, and it works. So.
Do you have like the last transmission if you crash with the GPS coordinates?
Yeah. So Crossfire can be set up to relay and capture all of the telemetry data, and it has its own storage on your radio controller. You also have in the DJI goggles, you've got a flash card on that, which is capturing everything up to the second it would crash. So you've got, if you set up to show your GPS coordinates, you know where your drone is at the time you crashed it. So there's a lot of neat people doing some awesome stuff with that. So they'll have maybe a little Google Maps screen overlaid on their video, so you can see where it's going, relatively speaking, in a corner of the video. So moving on. So this guy, Joshua Bardwell, he's probably got one of the best YouTube channels on all things to do with drones. And he's really about giving nuggets of information in 5 minutes. You learn how to do something. And I think that's his motto on his video channel. He says, I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something. And basically, in a very short amount of time, you can learn how to set up your beta flight, set up crossfire, even how to solder, almost anything aspect of this hobby. He's got probably close to 10 years worth of videos you can just go watch. And between Oscar Lang and Joshua Bardwell, that was pretty much all I needed to learn this hobby, and some patience. Here is a video of somebody flying a drone for the very first time after just doing simulation. I thought this would be worth watching. It's kind of interesting.
You see this black box right here? Well, I'm going to show you something right now. Some people are concerned that they might have to go for a long...
So this is analog, I think. Yeah. So this person had never flown a drone before. They just spent, like 5 or 6 hours on the simulator. You get a lot of snow with analog footage. It's just part of the nature. On the other hand, you can get a camera and transmitter for nearly free, so it's certainly an option for some people. But the goggles, you still got to buy fancy goggles. Why buy only one set instead of two? But as you can see, I mean, this is pretty similar to me. I was able to fly immediately after I did spend some time on the simulator. I'm sorry?
You said that's how you could do that?
Yeah.
This looks pretty aggressive flying.
You can do loops and spins and every other thing you can imagine. I've got a book over here that is kind of the Bible on learning to fly. And one of the things about the simulator is that really made the biggest difference for me was they have drone courses, because drone racing is actually a really big thing, and it's very competitive. And so they've got simulated tracks of all of the famous competitions and places, and all sorts of places that beyond what we could actually fly in the real world. You can, with the drone racing stuff, you've got flags or gates you have to fly around or through. And I found just the act of spending 10 minutes a day just flying a course, very quickly I could actually put the drone where I want it. That was hard for when I first started out. I could fly, but I couldn't make it go where I wanted exactly. Now I can just fly and stop a foot in front of you and then rip off, and I could fly through the entire barn from right here. Obviously, we don't want to do that. By the way, speaking of the barn and drones, we have, the fire station just a stone's throw away from here, and there's helicopter pads, so we never want to fly a drone anywhere near here. Just FYI. We want to always take care with your surroundings and understand, is there any air travel or potential for air travel, aircraft that could get in the way, or don't fly over highways or people and that sort of thing. Back. So there's a great crash course on how to learn to fly FPV in under 24 hours. Great link, worth watching, some good tips. Here's this book I was talking about. It's really an exceptionally well done book, and it explains the differences between the GPS drones where you kind of passively fly, but you get to point a camera, and these things. And I think it really very effectively breaks down the learning curve in the most efficient way. So if you want to be good, and just really enjoy the sport, you can waste a lot of effort if you're not learning the right things or not going about it the right way. So this book can help you avoid that. And I've got it over here. You can take a look at it. Let's see. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the sims, and I'm going to try firing one up and let you see it firsthand, because I brought the cables to make it run. So a lot of people just want to start off with a really powerful, really cool quadcopter, but it's just like giving a Corvette to a kid. Probably not a good idea. I've come up with, I think, a pretty good solution because I don't like wasting money. And once you fly, get comfortable with the basics, a 3-inch drone is going to be just useless. You'll never fly it again. So with this 5-inch drone, this is a 5-inch with the full-size props. First of all, it's ultra light, so it doesn't have any mass to hurt things or hurt itself. But we can start off with 3-inch props. And what that'll have, this thing has a 10-to-1 power ratio with the 5-inch props and the right motor. So it can go like close to 80 miles an hour full out if you wanted to. But by putting 3-inch props or going with these more energy efficient motors, which I recommend, you got something that can fly for a good half hour and with a small battery and doesn't have a lot of mass. And by putting the 3-inch props, you got kind of like training wheels. So you'll be able to get off the ground, but you're not going to be able to careen into somebody. And then you can switch the props, and now you have something that you can fly for years. And that's correct. 3-inch diameter versus these are 5-inch diameter. So I'm going to kind of stand up here and just kind of show you a little bit about the parts. So this is the GPS little module. It's a little 20 millimeter by 20 millimeter module. It also has an integrated compass. This is my GoPro mount, which is 3D printed up on top. And the video camera is right there for the first person view. That's the video transmitter for the, it's a little tiny cube. And I've got these parts so we can look at them actually over on the table here in a minute. The flight controller is a little board and the motors. And that's pretty much it. You got like 16 to 20 soldering points. Doesn't take very long to do that. And you can build a drone. It's really not that hard. I find it kind of therapeutic. It's just kind of zen, get out of your head, kind of focus on something. They're a lot of fun to build. Yeah, right. That's correct. I'll have one with an arm that sticks up so it's way up here. Yeah, I made a really nice CNC arm, but and then I found one on Amazon that was just about exactly what I made for like $18. So. Yeah, you bet. That's one of the reasons I like the 5-inch. It has capacity. 3-inch is really pushing it to fly a GoPro. The 5-inch, you can still fly 50, 60 miles an hour with a GoPro, and it works great. the 7-inch and or 8-inch, or I would say 7-inch is probably most popular when you want to get serious about film, because they're just smoother. They're more pitchable. They just easier to fly, really in a lot of different conditions. But they're not what you want to learn on. That's a flying tomahawk. You got to really respect it.
You have your controller, and then a software that you mount on your computer, and then you can fly. You don't need a drone.
No, that's exactly correct. So the first thing you're going to want to do, if you're interested in this hobby, is buy a controller, something like this.
Yeah.
And depending on which version you get, they're like 150 to actually 100 to $200, depending on which one. And I have a model for this set up for the simulator. So I'm going to plug this in, and we're going to give this a shot and let you see exactly what it's like to fly. How are we doing on time with everybody? Okay, great. Like to be able to have you guys get a chance to try flying this thing, but I've got links on here on the software, the sims, as well as the controllers, and so we're gonna start up the video game. So just a USB cable goes into your computer. Some of the new software has gotten more reasonable, so it's you know, in terms of requirements, you don't need to have a fancy gaming computer to run it. Just I'm running this off a laptop, and it seems to be just fine. So I just hit the throttle button. So this is somewhere in Arctic Lake. So this is typical what it feels like. So when you're first doing it, I'm trying to simulate what it's like when you're first flying. So you can, basic things like a loop, you can anybody want to try it? Give it a shot. Yeah, it'll warn you. Really? Yeah, it's pretty accurate. So let's see here. Here, I'll give you a. Let's try this one. Okay, so let's talk about this. This is the throttle. So this is gas. Gas. If it's pointed neutrally, then it's just going to go up. This is pitch. Just think of like a helicopter. You lean it forward to go forward. Same thing. So this goes forward, and this is back, and now this is roll. So it'll go like this. Yaw is like this, and yaw is on this side.
Yaw is this.
Yeah. So watch. I'm going to just take it off. A little gas. A little bit goes a long way.
Where's your gas?
This. Okay. And then by moving this to the side, I move both of these at the same time. I can kind of turn and keep it level. So if I just do this, I'm just kind of yelling. And then this is rolling. So by turning at the same time, I just move them both to the left and both to the right. You can direction. And then by going forward, now I'm going. See, we're actually going 100 miles, 90 kilometers.
I'm not ready to run this yet. But, no.
Here.
Somebody else can come in here and run this. I don't think I'm ready to run.
Okay.
All right. Yes, this is exactly what we need.
Okay, so this is gas. Okay, so gas is goes out. Okay, and then you can turn by do this, it rolls like this, and then this is yaw, which means it turns, say, this way. Okay, and by doing it at the same time. Give it a try. Yeah, right there. So you can watch people doing this, but you have to wire your brain by actually doing it. There's just no shortcut. So I would encourage you not to do anything besides learn the simulator before you think about anything else. You can buy a basic controller for $100. And one I got for 160. They have some cheaper options too. It's on Slack. I think I'll create a drone Slack channel if there's enough people that want to have interest in it. Just use that to share.
So you can send that email to get to the site.
Yeah, I'll send that over.
You guys have no trouble at all.
It's not, you know, the simulator, it's easy to go out and fly around kind of, but when you start flying a race course and actually try to go between obstacles, that's where you learn. Until you see how long, you know.
Yeah. So again.
That's the gas.
Yeah, this is forward.
Yeah. And that's the acceleration. If you forward is if you pitch it.
Okay. So this is how fast?
This is just how much motor power.
Okay.
The direction of the motor and the power is going is based upon your pitch.
So pitching forward or pitching back, and then rolling.
Just think like a helicopter. You know, if you give the gas and it's perfectly level, it's just going to go up. If you want to go forward, you've got to go up and then lean it forward, and then it'll fly like this. And then it can also fly this way or this way. And that's basically it.
And you have recommendations for these you'll send us?
Yes, absolutely. So this is this app is called Uncrashed, which I think is an app name because you can avoid crashing if you spend some time on it.
Yep.
You know, some of the other ones are Velocidrone, which is all about race car courses and has great physics. So let's see here.
How much does that cost?
They're all cheap. They're free to $20 for the apps. So I think the major players in the industry are trying to encourage people to learn, so they're not trying to gouge people on the software.
Windows or Mac?
I'm sorry?
Are they Windows or all Windows?
I think, well, it's Steam, so I don't know if you play video games on. I'm not a Mac guy, but I'm guessing you can play it on either. I know 2 or 3 of them specifically said Mac on there. Here, let's take a look. Yeah, so here's Velocidrone. Let's see if it says. So these things are actually set up using the characteristics of Betaflight. So you can actually build a virtual drone that has the same parts as what your drone is, and it'll fly pretty darn close if you set it up properly. That's actually really worth doing. Um, I have some models that I set up in the simulator that were as close as I could make it, and it really feels just like you're really flying. This one crashed. I just downloaded it, and it was promising to work on a lot of different computers and great graphics, and it does. It doesn't really feel exactly like my drone, like some of the other software, but it's you can probably download a trial on all of them, I think, and it might be worth. Um, Liftoff is probably the biggest, most popular one, and it's. By the way, see this picture right here, on the one with the hoops, the white drone. That's called a Cinewhoop. You can buy these frames, and they're basically shielded. The propellers are shielded. They tend to not be as maneuverable, but you can bump into walls and that sort of thing if you want to. I'm not really interested in flying inside my house, but they are, they are a good place if you're worried about crashing or hitting somebody or whatever. You can buy a Cinewhoop frame first, but they're not a lot of fun to fly once you actually know anything. So I think you're better off going with the 5-inch frame that I'm suggesting, and then using 3-inch props. And this frame's only $20, and it's rigid carbon fiber. It's modular. You just push it together and put 4 screws in it, and it's easy to build, and it's inexpensive, and you can buy kits for it. You can buy all the new arms and stuff for probably $8. I think $8 or $10. So it's really a great all-purpose frame and it flies great. This is a classic pure X design. So what that means is the mass of the battery and everything is right in the center, same distance on all 4 axes to the propellers. So everything's really well balanced. You can see the front propellers are like that. And the whole point is to get the camera, which mounts right here, out of the field of the view of the propellers. This gives you unobstructed, really nice quality video footage. It's a little bit of a compromise. If you want to do absolute acrobatics, that style is going to work better. That frame was actually built by the community. It's open source at the lowest possible price point because it's a racing frame for people that race and crash their drones every day. And they need something that's really inexpensive to repair and to buy. This is a custom carbon fiber frame that I built on my CNC machining center. And yeah, it weighs not much more than that X frame over there, even though this is an 8-inch drone. So this thing is serious. Top speed's about 130. It can cruise at 80 for close to 50 minutes with the right battery setup, and it can carry a pretty good sized camera.
Does it have different flying characteristics than your?
These bigger ones are just much more stable. They don't turn quite as fast, but you can cover a lot of ground, and it's much easier to get smooth footage with the bigger drone. So I would encourage start off with a 5-inch with 3-inch props. Get really comfortable with that. Go to the 5-inch props, and the major difference in speed will take your breath away. And then when these things are first time I flew one of these around my house, I was like, whoa, I just hit 90 miles an hour on the driveway, and I wasn't trying to. It's really, you don't want to fly them around people or anything, but they are amazing.
Now, are you going to be teaching a course on building a drone?
Yeah, that's the whole point.
That's the one on.
We're going to build that X that little box drone?
Yeah, it's going to be a series of courses. So the first one is mostly focused on the simulator, teaching you how to fly, and then there'll be
Others to follow.
Yeah, I don't want to teach you how to build a drone unless you've done the learning curve to fly the thing first, because there's just no point. You're just going to destroy it or hurt yourself. This is a 3D printed frame I made. It's actually flies really good. Pretty stiff. It seemed to crash okay. This one's set up for a really big battery, long range. So this is a 7-inch, so you can fly mountains or whatever. And the nice thing about the 3D printed designs is, for the cost of a little bit of filament, you can just replace it. And it's all one piece, which all the store-bought ones or kits that you buy, they're trying to maximize the amount of carbon fiber that they can, drone parts they can get out of a sheet of carbon fiber. So they're all little pieces that you assemble, which from a weight point of view and stiffness point of view is always going to be compromised. Having a one-piece frame, whether it's carbon or 3D printed, it's a good design, has some significant advantages. And we have some great 3D printers here, so why not? I tend to print a lot of carbon, polycarbonate, which may or not be friendly here, but you can probably print with the PETG carbon is pretty good, and that's tough too. I think you can get better advice from ETA than I'll offer you on 3D printing.
Can you walk through the power requirements of these? You mentioned 1.3 kilowatts. Is that per motor or total?
Yeah, like this motor is 1,300 watts.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to leave your mic.
And you're talking about this flight controller. Let's talk about that. I like all-in-one controllers. They just started coming out with these. The advantage of an all-in-one controller is it has the brains, which is the flight controller, and it also has what's called the ESC, or electronic speed control. This thing costs you. You can program it to offer warnings like your battery's low or you lost telemetry or whatever, and it's pretty neat what you can do with it. This board does the job of 2 to 3 boards. It has onboard video, which can be its own board. It has the speed control, which gets all that electricity to the motors. And it's also got a computer all in one board. So it's much more compact, less weight, and frankly, a lot easier to set up. Right? You do the 3 wires for each motor. You do the 4 wires to the GPS, and 4 wires for the crossfire, and you're done. Plug in the video in that little port right there, and start load up beta flight. I can build a whole drone in like half an hour.
If I put a kilowatt battery on my e-bike, it's about this big, right? So how does that work in terms of?
Well, this thing's designed to fly this battery.
What's this little kilowatt called?
This is a 6S, 6,000 mAh, 35C.
6S, that's like 24 volts.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a really high-powered LiPo. If you're going to do maximum power like acrobatics, you're only flying for 8 or 10 minutes. Okay. On the other hand, if you're building the type of stuff I like to build, I have drones that I've flown for 55 minutes. There's a great video from this guy that kind of pioneered this style of drone. And hold on. Has this been interesting or helpful to you guys so far?
Yeah.
This is actually one of the best videos to me for the type of stuff I want to
do. Hey guys, back again with the production version of the T-Motor 2203.5 super efficient lightweight motors. Pretty excited to make this video. Jump on the website for the details.
Yeah, these motors are like
this is also
8 to 20 bucks.
Video. There's a link below for that.
For building one. And,
this is the 1500 kV variant.
This is an ultralight endurance motor. It's not designed to
be the
fastest. It's supposed to, but it's one of the most efficient motors you can build. I've run a 7-inch off of it, and that's what that one that I lost with Doug.
Quite nice. It's matte black.
I could fly.
Really sets it off.
56
it also
minutes.
uses a proper.
There's still a little bit of power left with a small battery pack.
Reach out to GemFan, and they said that there was
a 5mm version coming.
But
and he drilled them out, and then he has a router table, CNC router table.
I've now got a light.
Here we go to the fun part.
Hell yeah. I think I've got the ideal prop and motor combination for an endurance quad. Let's get the frame done.
So he just did a simple frame that he did on a CNC router. We do have a CNC router at the barn, but we have to deal with carbon fiber dust to figure out a solution for that. But anyway, he just got a sheet of carbon fiber and cut it out. And it's just an ultralight X frame, nothing too fancy. It's solid. I like doing ones that are 3D, that are like I-beam construction. You can get the weight lighter and make it more durable so it doesn't crash. But that thing the whole drone only weighs 188 grams. No, that's just straight carbon fiber. Yeah, the frame's like 47 grams. And it's a 6-inch. So this is designed to fly for over 50 minutes. And he actually does that on the video. But GPS is on top. It's kind of it's similar to that X frame one I built, but with a little larger prop. Which the larger the prop, as long as you're not overdoing the motor, the more efficient it's going to be. It'll fly. Like if I fly the same drone with a 5-inch prop versus a 7-inch prop, I'm going to gain like, gosh, at least 35% more flight time, assuming I'm not overdriving the motor. I mean, there's a limit to how big of a prop the motor will turn without overheating. But yeah, it's a clean design, and he offered the design on Thingiverse, so you can download it, or if you want to cut one out. Sorry. So yeah, so that's the whole frame. Now, you can buy these things, you can print them. There's a million frames out there, all sizes. But this is unique because, yeah, it's 43 grams for the whole frame. And
the endurance quad is all built up. Now it's time to put it to the test. This is the DVR of my endurance flight. The goal here was to maintain a 40 km/h average and keep the quad in the air as long as I could go for. Up the top right, you can see the total distance traveled. Bottom right, I've got the elapsed time. In the middle bottom, I've got the kilometer average. And over to the left, I've got the milliamp hours consumed, the voltage, and the amperage. You can see the amps barely peak over 5.
So that's 33
So now I'm getting
minutes,
to the time I achieved on the ultralight 5-inch of 37 minutes.
On the bottom right,
that was using the 18650 cells. So by stepping up the battery capacity, I knew I'd get a little bit more on the 6-inch, but by how much I was unsure of. So here as I'm coming to the end of the flight, you can see the quad bobbling around a little bit. My battery's
187 grams.
It's only a 4S, so that's 8 volts in total. I'm amazed that the quad is still in the air at this point. Coming into land, 55 minutes. Wow.
That'd be without the battery.
I just flew the ultralight 6-inch.
And it has the camera. It has everything but the battery. And, but I use these lithium-ion cells because I'm using efficient. You get about 20% more flight time if you are staying within the amp delivery capability of the cell.
You can see on this chart that averaging 5 amps.
You can't use a big
about
monster motor with lithium-ion batteries. They just don't have enough. They can't deliver enough current.
It's not all about pedestrian speeds with these.
They last a lot
doubled the
longer.
cruise average
So
to
if you
80
build it
km/h.
ultralight and you build it, use the right motors, and you stay within the parameters of the battery, that's where you get the maximum flight time.
All this performance comes at the expense of durability. These ultralight quads are not going to be for everybody. They really are not meant to be crashed. However, the capability of them is amazing.
Not seeing the propellers.
Well, he's an advanced flyer. He competes, so you can see his cameras at a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
So it's flying like this always, and you can get it above it. I would venture to say you're probably not going to want your camera pointed 45 degrees unless you're racing or you're trying to cover a lot of ground. I mean, there's arguments for learning to fly that way if you ever want to race, because it'll avoid some bad habits. But people don't think about basic things like, okay, I want to land it. Okay, well, I can't see the ground at all. I can't see what's in front of me when I'm just hovering. I'm looking up there. So I have to tilt it, look, and then, yeah, so what people do to land a racing drone is you're coming in really, really close to the ground, and then you do this and then cut the gas and you just kind of skid to a stop. It's a skill. If I have my camera usually about 15 degrees, which with a wide angle, I can see the ground in front of me and I can fly at a reasonable speed. With the newer 8-inch one, I'm putting the camera a little bit farther tilted because I'm going faster. But you know, there's a lot of rabbit holes on this hobby, but I don't want to go start somebody out on this drone because it is pretty delicate. Whereas my box frame, you literally can throw it into the wall and it won't break. It's amazing how durable that frame is. So just to show you some final footage of it, a little drone like this can do.
Some footage I captured.
This is with a GoPro on it, so you can get an idea.
They wanna judge me, I'll testify. Catch me on Insta, I'm verified. They want me quiet, I amplify. I'm on my way. So the best thing that you've ever seen. You know that you're about to the queen. You lose all your senses and reason. I'll give you something to believe.
It's actually hard to learn how to fly that level at first. That's why the sim comes in handy.
Nothing left to prove. I gotta hit the beat. I gotta hit the beat.
I think he's in Australia. I don't know what the flight height is, but we have a hard limit of 500 feet here. Let's just talk a little bit about altitude. You know, I find myself not wanting to fly very high because aside from the limit, from a regulatory point of view, there's not much to see. You're just everything's a little speck. It's boring footage. It's just not much fun to see. You can, by the way, you can fly that 500 feet above the ground wherever you are. So if it wasn't a prohibited place, we could fly 500 feet above the peak of Mount Rainier, and those 7-inch drones could fly from the base to the top and back probably several times, just for perspective. That's the capability of them. Unfortunately, you can't fly in certain regulated parks and that sort of thing. So that's another subject, learning safe places to fly, understand the rules. There's this website called intofpv.com. It has all things on the sport. It's really one of the best sources of information if you want to find about rules or people. There's a lot of people building drones on there. It seems to be rational people for the most part on that forum. So there's mostly trying to give good advice, not just a bunch of kids trying to build crazy things. Yeah, with batteries, they have some ranges on when they're more efficient and not. And obviously, you can mitigate that if you want. The battery is going to get warm just by operating it. And you can put, there's conformal coatings, waterproof coatings. You can there's people that build drones that you can completely submerge and fly in a rainstorm. I'm not interested in doing that at this time, but I know it's possible. So yeah, if you want to build an all-weather drone, there's plenty of tutorials on how to do that. You know, start small, learn how to fly, learn how to control your vehicle so you can get good footage that looks good, and then get comfortable gradually going a little bit farther beyond your yard and stuff like that. And then once you start getting, you know, flights over 10 minutes, you have to start thinking about battery management. I better keep enough battery left to get home. And then there's things like battery sag, where all of a sudden, when you get to that threshold, especially on a lithium ion, it just suddenly your power just starts going away. And if you fly a drone around and around until it gets really, you know, battery, you'll just suddenly just about quit. You'll barely hover. You don't want that when thing's a half mile away and you have to go hoof it to go find the thing. So that's where there's skill set in long range flying, which is kind of what I'm interested in. You have to have radio that can reach beyond your longest possible range. You have to have an ability to get the thing home if you lose your visual camera. You have to you have to be able to get comfortable tracking your voltage and power remaining and that sort of thing as well. So better to sneak up on it than just go try to fly 5 miles or something. It's all there. You can put whatever you want. There's like 50 different data points you can put your on the display. And you can also program the radio control to talk to you, to tell you key things on regular intervals of time if you want. Yeah, why don't we just have you guys check out some of this stuff over here? Some controllers. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. What's up? Right now, you have two major companies that everyone's using. There's the analog options called Fat Shark. I don't know where they got that name. And they now had a pseudo-digital one, but they've had problems with it. It really never worked. And once DJI came out, it just really hurt their business a lot. There's new, this is a 720p, and it looks pretty darn good. I'll plug in a drone so you can actually see it live here if you want to.
That's the DJI?
Yeah, these are the DJI goggles. And,
what kind of frame rate?
It's 120 frames.
Okay.
Yeah, so no latency, 120 frames, and a really sharp 720p that's as good as it gets. I have aftermarket antennas on here. This has actually 4 antennas, and that's part of the secret to why DJI can get so far on their video range with such low latency. This is for, these antennas are omnidirectional, so for flying reasonable distances, probably 4 miles or less, these work great, and they work all around. This is my long-range setup, and this is a directional antenna. So you want to be pointing this generally in the direction of the drone you're flying. It has very little power behind. It's all out in front. So a lot of people use these for long-range flights. If you want to get really crazy, people are using like a tripod with an array that's mounted, off of this. But yeah, the DJI goggles makes the sport enjoyable. looking at a little screen or a little speck in the sky never seemed too much fun to me. But when you see this, it'll take your breath away. I have.
And that's a wireless connection to the controller?
Yeah. Let's see here.
So is this an alternative to using a phone? Can you still?
No, you don't use. Yeah, I don't use a phone, except for somebody figured out how to hack it with USBs, and there's an app now where you could plug the USB-C from your phone into the goggles, and then it'll live stream the goggles, so your visual observer can see what you're seeing if they want.
Mark, can you turn your mic on?
I'm sorry?
Would you turn your mic on? You have the live mic.
Oh, yeah.
Switch is on the top.
Yes.
Is it on? You hold it on very long, or?
Should you hold on for a minute or so it comes on?
The battery being worn out.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll talk louder.
Fair enough.
I just wanted to see. Yes.
So that is, in that case, that's hardwired to the controller. That
They're sorry, you can bind them. So wirelessly.
yeah, okay.
So, you want to take a peek?
So you said there is a hack that you can plug
You can probably so you can use a tablet or
goggles into the phone.
yeah, you can plug a USB cable from the goggles into a tablet, or I have a tablet for my observer so they can see properly what's going on.
Totally see why you need to practice.
Yeah, not everyone wants to see it. Yes, it is. Anyway, the goggles are, I think it's, oh, sorry. I think the battery was, this battery was fine. So, here's the two competing cameras that are out there that I use. And they're both created originally, the technology by DJI and then licensed. So there's a company called Caddx, which is that one. This is the original DJI Air. This has a DVR using an SD card on it, and it records 1080p at 120 frames per second. So it's really high quality video. It's a lot of people are just putting this straight off on the YouTube, and people seem to like it.
So why do you need to go?
Well, this is just 1080p, and if you go to 4K or 5.7K, or you do 360, which makes your video better, it's just better. But yeah, this is acceptable for basic footage. Yes?
What's the pricing of
These cameras are between $120 and $160, depending on which setup you get. There's a couple different camera module is separate from the recording or transmitting module. I like this one, aside from the DVR, because it's 2 antennas, and theoretically there's a little bit more range you can get out of the video if you're ever pushing it. This is the newer one that really has taken over the market. It's called the Cadex Vista, and it's half the weight. It's smaller, very tiny, and it doesn't have a DVR on it. Now, the goggles has a DVR on it, so you're getting a 720p, not a 1080p footage, but in the goggles anyway. And they don't show you a better picture while you're flying. They're identical as far as that goes. I've flown this 5 miles and it was fine on range, so I had full signal strength.
You like that?
This is smaller, but I mean, for having the DVR, that came out first, and these came out second, so they're smaller and lighter. They get hot though, so you have to. If you're bench testing, this thing will start to overheat and get angry. It won't hurt it; it'll just shut down. This you can leave it plugged in for a while. Digital video recorder. So yeah, it's got a little micro SD card in that slot, and record the footage.
Who makes this thing? Is it made in China or hobbies here?
Yeah, DJI is Chinese. So yeah, that's. This is one of my first 3D frames that has basically it's relieved and stuff, and it's pretty light.
That's 3D printed.
No, that's carved out on my brother's video.
So Mark, if we take the class, are you going to make all these pre-selections for us?
Yes.
And this is just kind of an upgrade when we
that's
about
correct.
Thanks. Because
I know, we're
this
just
choice
gonna
is made for me initially.
No, we'll basically get a bill of materials, you'll get this $20 frame, you get this camera with either at 120 or 160, depending on what the lower latency camera or not, and then $8 to $20 motors, your choices. You want to go fast or do you want to cruise? And that's it.
Do those have to be matched motors at all, or do you just get them whenever?
You see 4 of a kind.
They come, but they're factory matched somehow.
Yeah. They sell them usually 4 at a time.
So will you give us the material sheet when we go out and get?
Yeah, that's
correct. Show up in class.
That's right.
And it's ordered.
Yeah, that's correct. I'll figure out something that they have in stock, and some alternatives.
Correct. For building A, you have the building one here.
So for the frame, you can use this $20 frame, or I've got like 5 designs that you can 3D print, and then there's a million on the internet. So if you want to provide your own frame, you're welcome to it. As long as it will fit the components, it doesn't matter. But the store-bought frame will fit everything, as you can see. And it's pretty light. Welcome to check that out.
And these are is this 5 inches?
That's 5 inch.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah. So this is my original one that I bought, and I don't recommend it because it's really heavy. I mean, it's got some mass. That's without the battery. But let me turn it.
That's
Yeah.
Because of the weight and the size, do these have to be registered with the FAA?
Yeah, let's talk about that. So if basically, there's a couple sets of rules that you need to be aware of. First of all, if you're flying recreationally, meaning you're not making any money, and you're flying something that's under 250 grams, then you can fly it, okay? As long as you're not flying restricted airspace or over people and those basic rules. However, if you want to fly something that's over 250 grams, the FAA wants you to register it for $5, and that's it. Just it takes about a minute on the website. And if you want to fly commercially, and that's kind of there's some gotchas there. Like, let's say you set up a YouTube video channel that you're making public. You'll notice my videos are all blind links, and I don't choose to publicize them because I'm doing this for me, not to build a following. YouTube monetizes things. We don't pay you enough views. We have actual FPV. There's a couple guys out there making several $100,000 a year on their YouTube video for their drone flights. They're going to want you to have your 107 license, which isn't a big deal to get, actually.
Did you do that?
I don't know. I'm kind of different. I'm just doing this for purely. It's such an enjoyable thing. I love photography, and I used to do kite aerial photography with a 4-string kite and get some pretty crazy shots. This is just a whole different level.
So getting a heavier license?
Yeah. So the frequencies that you are using, the answer to that question is sometimes. Depending on which protocols you choose to use, there's some exemptions. Like Crossfire has an exemption, so you don't need it. Same thing with the DPI one, as long as you're using it.
Okay, so you might need a license specifically for the transmitter.
And so only if you're using, depends on which protocol. So I don't, but actually I'm kind of interested in maybe getting one someday, just for knowledge.
Is the FAA certification kind of similar to getting a license?
It's easier, much easier.
So, I think the rules have changed a little bit, so the new rule is that if you fly anything, technically you're supposed to have a certificate.
I was getting there.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so for the longest time, if it's under 250 grams and you're flying recreationally, you can do what you want as long as you're flying safely, essentially. They just came out with this trust certificate thing, so they want you to take a test. You can't fail the test, but they want you to take it for knowledge awareness and certify that you understand those things.
And then you get this.
And then you get that one.
And that's exactly right.
Right.
But you have to go to a FAA certified site.
Yeah, it has to be the official site.
So it's like, I took mine through Chippewa State College in Minnesota. You just go on, register, sign your name, provide information. Then you have this template that you just learn some stuff. And you answer some questions along the way that you just were taught. And then you complete the form and you get this certificate.
So the FAA sent you that?
Yeah, that's the certificate. It's called trust certificate, right? But as you say, and then that allows you to fly anything over 249, but those need to be registered. That's the difference. So if you fly like a Mavic Mini, which is 249 grams, you don't have to register it. These have to be registered, but it's
I built a lot of mine under 250. Yeah, I depending on the right motor setup, I can get that well under 250.
That 250 applies to battery plus the frame, everything?
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people get all worked up over the registration or not. Look, bottom line is, don't do anything stupid. Register the thing and enjoy the sport.
It sounds like it's cheap and easy. So
it's $5 to register a drone. It's not a big deal.
In the commercial, if you buy like a drone like from DJI drones, it won't let you fly. It's programmed. Oh, you're in a fly-free zone. You can't fly. It won't take off. Right?
There's some gotchas there, like it won't let you fly over the maximum altitude. The problem is it doesn't take into account the actual altitude from the ground of where you are a lot of times. So if you want to fly a mountain with the DJI drone, you're out of luck.
Actually, I've never had a height restriction. You set the height.
Well, my friend was having problems with his he got, and he had multiple times where he was flying and he ran into a problem.
If it's in a restricted area, it won't let you, but here on acreage,
You can fly it.
I have it as high as you want it.
So what about the beta flight software? Can you program it to say, don't fly in restricted areas if you're not aware of what's restricted?
I have mine just to bark at me.
Okay,
Literally.
so, but it's aware.
It's aware, yeah. I just don't, I don't even get close to that height because there's not a lot to see at that height with those wide angle.
Right, so you mentioned like flying by the helipad, things like that.
Yeah, so that's where, that's where you know, obviously don't fly near military base, airport, you know, anything that's.
National parks,
yeah.
monuments.
What about like there's a lot of boats that go by? Is there any rule against going over a cargo ship and taking?
I would never want to fly anywhere near a cargo ship.
Yeah.
That's just no.
Okay.
I don't think there's a rule.
It just, but you know, you're going to unnerve the captain if they see you, and because they don't know what your intentions are, and they're going to probably call a Coast Guard, and then a bunch of people are going to be involved. And so it's just not a good idea.
The main thing is you go around buffer. For example, you're allowed to fly over a highway, but you're not allowed to stop over
Yeah,
the highway.
that's actually
you can cross. And
You
so
can
if
cross.
you're crossing over the ferry or something like that, I don't think there'd be a problem. But you're not allowed to hover.
But, yeah, I mean, we can have a whole class just on the rules, and I encourage you to, knowledge is key to this sport. There's a lot of ways you can cause yourself financial damage as well as get regulated, you know, fined or whatever if you do something stupid. But on the other hand, it's a really enjoyable sport, and if you just follow the rules, common sense goes a long ways. Not an issue.
But if you want to teach that class as the last in the sequence, give everybody FAA certification.
I can't, it has to come from an official location. I don't know where the bar is set up for that.
I went through the certification program this past summer, and it wasn't that bad.
There's some,
It's a couple hour exam that you take, and essentially you have to learn the same stuff that a pilot has to learn, other than flying the plane.
It's kind of interesting info, actually.
Did you do the 107? Is that?
Yeah, the commercial
one. Yeah.
Because I was doing some photography for real estate.
Yeah.
You can't sell it.
You can't sell it.
That's right. Yeah, and I know of a YouTuber that was not doing anything quote commercial, but they got a lot of views, and they got an inquiry letter from because of that. And even though they weren't trying to monetize or do anything, it was just the guy's a really good cinematographer, and people watched it. I mean, like 50,000 views on one video, and it got the attention of people. You know, and obviously you don't want to film yourself doing anything stupid.
I took my drone down to Mexico this couple of weeks ago. I was trying to get pictures of whales out of Baja. So I was up pretty high looking for whales. And unfortunately, they never cooperated. It was fun trying.
You know, did you fly there, or how did you transport the drone?
You could take it as carry-on luggage.
Yeah, that's right.
You can't check the lithium-ion batteries, but you can take them as carry-on luggage, and so long as they're in the manufacturer's container. DJI sells a pouch that you put it all in.
Yeah,
and I have no problem with TSA or Mexico.
Yeah, I was just curious if that changed. I'm going to Arizona this week, later on. Thinking about we're going to Sedona.
Is there like an amp-hour limit to the battery size?
Yeah, there's a maximum amp hour that's allowed, and it's printed on the side of the battery. And the commercial DJI batteries are well within that.
Yeah. I mean,
So you didn't do it. You just packed it with your luggage that you checked.
No, you can't check it. It has to be carry-on.
The battery.
Oh, just the battery.
Well, I had the drone and everything in a little case.
Box. Yeah, well, you had to show that, the
Or
battery.
I went through TSA and they never wanted to check it.
I know people that they'll check the drone, but there's absolutely no batteries in there, and they'll carry on the batteries, pouch that's full.
But you needed a proof pouch.
Yeah.
If
Some sort of
if you read the TSA language, it wants to be in the manufacturer's pouch, however it comes. They want to make sure the contacts aren't going to touch anything metallic.
I see.
You know, they're not going to get crushed.
Yeah. I mean, depending on the battery, I mean, some of these LiPo batteries, and some of the new lithium-ion batteries can generate up to 50 amps. That's a, 20 some odd volts in the 6F cell. That's a lot. That's a kilowatt. You can do some welding. Yes.
Mark, if you're on the fence about getting involved and getting started, you don't want to go down the rabbit hole of latest and greatest. What do you invest?
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
A satisfying experience, but not one.
So you can, let's talk about the blended approach. Okay. Build a drone where the basic building blocks are $20 frame, $40 for motors, a cheap little video camera that's analog, and a cheap, which is probably $30, and some couple hundred, like $200 or $300 for analog headset. Radio controller, you can get something you could fly with for probably $100 or a little less. And that's, now you have an analog setup. It's not, what you're giving up is longer range. You got like maybe half-mile max range. Add Crossfire to that. It's $30 for the module, but it's like $100 something dollars. But I think the Ghost or the other option, the other protocol, gives you similar range to Crossfire for a much cheaper price point. So I would probably do one of those two. They're just a little, they have a little bit more of a learning curve to set them up, but they work. They work really good.
We're still working out the logistics of your class, but I think the plan is you're going to bring in a few controllers and...
Yeah, the goal is to get some computers set up over there so we can do a simulator class and get everybody able to land, run through a course, actually learn how to fly properly, not just go up and anyone can give it some gas and kind of drift along or whatever, but to actually make the drone go where you want, stop it, start, hover, learn the basics. That's the objective of that class. And that'll be a function of how many reasonably fast laptops you guys have and or computers we have at the barn. How many people for the capacity.
We're going to have a variety of equipment to test out.
Yeah. So I'm looking for a cheaper option for the controller. I think that the traditional one is going by this style has been kind of the industry standard for a very long time, for going back to the old days of flying RC planes. The newer ones are more like a gamepad type style, but they're using the same protocol, much of the same capabilities, and they're a little cheaper. So a lot of people like the more modern. If you ever play video games, you may find it's a lot easier for some people.
And they're probably lighter too?
Much smaller and lighter to pack in a bag. So this is infinitely customizable with a maximum number of switches. Each one of these switches can be set to do whatever I want. I can make this one beep how many times, how many satellites are out, or I have this one go stabilizes, so it goes like hover type flight, and then if I go all the way, it goes to return home via GPS. So that's kind of a two-stage fail-safe GPS thing for me. So like if a bee's on my head or something, I'll just flip it one, deal with the issue, and it'll just hover, and then I can flip it to the second one if I lose video or something. But it's all customizable. You've got sliders you can adjust. This just has more controls. So if you really want to get it dialed in, if you just want to fly, the other one's less is more probably for a lot of people. So anyway, any other questions?
How many classes and the length of the class?
Yeah, simulator class probably, hour to 90 minutes.
Yeah, we're trying to break it up into chunks.
So so that will be the goal of that will be to get a appropriate number of people basic confidence so that they feel like, okay, I know enough to I can go home and practice and I've learned I'm going to be able to not kill the drone the first time I fly one.
You talked about like 3D modeling and drone things, so that would be an optional thing for you. Not everybody's going to.
Yeah, I mean, I really have a blast designing drone frames now in Fusion. So I don't know if there's interest in that, but we have to figure out a way for you guys to be able to they can print them. One of the advantages with 3D printed designs is they don't have to be, they can be, there's structures like ovals that can be very rigid and strong. Like a tapered oval for the arms, where the motors go. I built a number of designs that way. And they came out really light, really rigid, plus with the different fill levels you can set up with a 3D printer so that it's got a shell and a hollow material that has a matrix. It can be very strong and light. And if you crash it, you just print a new frame. It's not a big deal.
Bottom line, check the calendar. The first ones are already on there, and we'll add them as we figure out.
So basically simulator class, and then we'll do a build class. There might be probably 2 or 3 classes total to get people done. Is there anyone here that's never soldered in their life that would be interested? It's not hard to do, but there's some, it's something you just have to learn the basics and practice a little bit. I find soldering kind of relaxing, actually.
Smoking your face.
Well, they have the newer ones that don't smoke.
We have cheap extractors.
And then,
We talked about doing a soldering class too.
Yeah.
We'll get that.
So, we'll get Nathan to teach you guys how to do better soldering. Yes?
My son is really into drones. Obviously, he's not 18, and your website says 18 plus. Would that be something that if I took the class with him? I know that you don't want those kids just being dropped off.
Yeah, I mean,
he's a serious, obviously, he's a serious person that enjoys the drone sport. Would that be something needed?
I'm open to.
You don't want to accompany him?
No, I would if I.
That's normally what the policy is, but we can check.
I just don't know if I'm going to be able to.
I don't have any problem with it, but it has to be within our policy.
Right. I think it's changed.
I don't really know
what the classes now too, so it's just.
And I'll sponsor him too. He looks like he'd be a really good addition to the class.
Yeah, it's not that I'm into it. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do all the classes. It sounds like it's going to be multiple classes to invite. So my next question is do you have to do one class to do the next, do the next, do the next? Because I understand the build process, but he may not necessarily need to take your simulator class because he already has the ability to fly. And so, do you need to do all the classes in order to do the next one? Because they're prerequisites.
If he wants to do simulator work out at home, or anybody does, I'm willing to waive that. But make no mistake about it, you really want to have a good 5 or 6 hours minimum worth of flight time in a simulator so you don't crash. Because it's not like flying a DJI or stabilized drone. You will crash it in 10 seconds.
No, I don't mean skipping the drone portion of it. That's the third question I had is, if you wanted to do the drone practice, like you plugged in that controller into your either. Yeah, you just get a controller. You can get a really cheap option for probably $50 to $80, but I would say just buy one that you're going to actually fly the drone with. Don't buy one thing for the video game and one thing.
So what would you recommend for that?
I have that on the PowerPoint. You can send a link to.
Okay. You're going to post that on Slack.
Yeah, it'll be on Slack.
We'll find a way of getting it to you.
I have an email list for you guys, so I'll send it to everybody.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good job. Thanks. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Could have gone there.
Well, online.